How did you come to live in Mallacoota, Mr. Cashmore?
So my wife Rebecca, who's now the business manager, we arrived here in October 2011, and we were going to stay for a year, but now this is my 10th year and we love it here. I came from the northeast of Victoria and I was helping look after about 84 small schools right across the northeast of Victoria, right down to Kinglake, right up to Wodonga and Corryong and over to Yarrawonga and those places, and Shepparton. So we came here and I'd been a principal for a number of years before that, and this is a great place to be.
So you've been in quite a few places in Victoria. Have you had experience before the last summer of bushfires and bushfire seasons?
Yeah, yes we have. I suppose in a previous life I spent a fair while in Corryong, which is a pretty strongly fire-prone area in terms of grass and bushfire and farming bushfire, and that's probably been reflected in what's happened recently. And also involved in Black Saturday. We were in the middle of Black Saturday when it broke out.
Yeah.
And even getting home, there are a lot of visions of that day and what that looked like from Toobarak, Seymour, Rose White, back up to Tallangatta. And yeah, we've been pretty much involved in that sort of stuff.
So you've been in Mallacoota now for almost a decade.
Yeah.
What's your role been here in that time?
Okay, so my full-time job is a principal here, and it's the privilege and the price of being in a small town, but it's certainly more a privilege for us here to micromanage our students. I've taken a couple of strong interests in the golf club, so I'm vice captain of the golf club here, in the or vice president of the golf club, and was vice captain, which is going through a major change at the moment. And I probably find that I've served on the MDHSS board, the local hospital board, for a number of years. That's probably enough because it's a pretty full-time job.
How many kids are at the school here?
This year 141, which is probably an increase in enrolment over the last couple of years. I think the peak at Mallacoota was 220, 240, but there was a sharing of the abalone licences, which probably decreased some of the town's opportunity. But we're holding well, and we are the only school. There will always be a P12 at Mallacoota because our nearest school's a long way away.
And how many kids doing their final year this year?
This year we have about 13, which is a fairly big cohort for us. And we do VCE, VET and VCAL. So we stretch, and a lot of my staff and teachers are individual faculties. A couple of English teachers, a couple of maths teachers, but certainly our primary structure in early years and middle primary and later primary are sort of standalone composite grades, and then some pretty great experts in their field in terms of the secondary model too. But a lot of that is individual too, which is always a challenge. And we employ a lot of part-time staff. So EFT here we'd have about 15 1.0 teachers and about 5 and a bit education support staff, but we employ 32 people, and that's a bit of a nightmare for my assistant principal trying to do a timetable.
Well, I mean, how many kids have you got here? We're living under COVID-19 restrictions, and I imagine that's affecting the day-to-day life of the school.
Absolutely.
How's it changed things for you?
Gee. In many ways, we pride ourselves on micromanaging, so we're probably a school that can respond as well as any other in terms of how we present our remote learning, with the anxiety and challenge that the students have got around internet connection. We're not on NBN. We have kids who live in isolated pockets outside Mallacoota. The department are trying to give us that access to dongles and things like that, but it is a bit anxious for, and I'll talk to you later about our Year 12 cohort or our final year cohort. Like all schools would be in a state of unknown and a state of new ground, and it's all new. But we've responded, I think, really well.
And how many in just their first year of school?
No, this year's really good. We have about 18, I think, first years, of which we've got, I think, 7 first-time families, which is another big effort. We've had a lot of angst around, and Oh, we've had a lot of project work around the new kinder. So we've been granted a grant for a new kinder, and the current one, they did come to my school, our school, and set up for a while. Now they're back at the old kinder. Whether they stay there or whether that gets relocated, a lot of that's around community consultation and also what the departments, shires look like in terms of how that might set up.
So the kids, I take it, have had a lot to deal with this year. Bushfires and now COVID-19. How are they holding up?
Oh, look, I think magnificently considered. It is a double whammy for us, and I think, and I might talk later about the context of Mallacoota in the fire is quite unique in terms of it's multi-layered, and also having COVID-19 is certainly two unbelievable events that impact greatly on our small community. We're not the only community in Australia too, and I'm sure it impacts many other places. But for Mallacoota it has been a double whammy.
What's the community like here? I mean, who are the people that live here?
Wow. There'd be better people than me to talk to around this, but the pride of Mallacoota is around its strong voice, around its strong environmental footprint, its very strong artistic footprint, both performing and visual arts, and about the connection to environment. Lots of examples of that. I suppose historically, from what I know, Mallacoota, as you said before, is a halfway place between Melbourne and Sydney. So we've had a lot of quite well-known performers drop into Mallacoota and perform, and still do, over many years. And we have a really strong arts council, which was run in a festival type event through the Easter breaks and things like that. But I think in terms of what we're doing in Mallacoota, they're strong. There is, it's not without its own set of conflict. We have a group of people who are independent owners, strong-willed businessmen called the abalone industry, the divers, and a strong environmental footprint. And people might remember the challenge of building Bastion Point and what that would look like as an environmental issue and what that looks like in terms of access to ocean access. And my job here is not to have an opinion about that and to support my community. We run the Mallacoota Mouth, which is a really magnificent newspaper. It comes out weekly, it's 40 pages.
Yep.
It's done brilliantly, but from my point of view, my school council has asked that I edit that correctly in terms of not publishing things that are too controversial, and that's always a work in progress around me and others making a judgment about what can and can't go into the mouth. But the voice of the people here is really strong, and it's one of the attractions at Mallacoota. As diverse as it might be, it's passionate, and because we are so isolated, people need to make their own fun, their own sense of identity, and you go back through the history with a couple of people here, there are some wonderful stories that go on, and probably I better not tell too many of them here.
So it sounds like there's a number of people, artists, self-employed, some small businesses.
Yeah.
Who are the big employers in this area?
Okay, so the co-op would employ a lot of people. The co-op works on a system now at the moment where it's got its own cannery, or had its own cannery, hopefully about to be rebuilt.
So when you say the co-op, you mean the abalone?
Yeah, the abalone co-op, yeah, and that's exported. You can't technically buy abalone in town because it's all canned and sent away. They would probably be a big employer, as would the Mallacoota District Health Service and the school. And then we've got what we call our local shopkeepers. We call it the CBD down at Mallacoota. And they're a strong group of people too. And we have an enormous amount of volunteer groups.
Right.
I'm going to guess well over 30. And that's not bad for a town of under 1,000 people.
So about 1,000 people in ordinary times, and then does it swell over the holiday times?
Huge. The Christmas window is where our local businesses make their money, including short-term rentals and holiday rentals and trade in our main street. That could swell anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people. we have one of the largest caravan parks on the foreshore in the Southern Hemisphere, run by the local shire, East Gippsland Shire, but there's also a lot of holiday accommodation around Malakuta, and a lot of people would watch this, and many would have been to Malakuta in their days.
And so the local community, from what you say, sounds like they rely on the income from the Christmas period in particular for the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
Right.
And of course the double whammy of the bushfire and COVID has certainly challenged them.
So it's pretty quiet here now.
Oh, well, yeah, I think I might have mentioned to you, there's only the one coffee van in the street selling coffee, so it's a pretty popular thing because we've got all our contractors in clearing at the moment, or starting to clear, and yeah, most of the things are pretty well shut down.
So what I mean, other than the normal school curriculum, do the kids learn about bushfire education? I mean, they live at the end of a huge sort of park and forest area.
We do a lot of work over the years in connection to, we've had some really great programs run here. We've joined with Parks Victoria and doing camera shots of feral animals at night time. We've joined Parks Victoria with water quality. Our advanced program, absolutely, we supply here a really good program for surf lifesaving. So our students, although we haven't got a pool in Malakuta, we have the pub pool to learn to swim in, and that's probably about the size of this table. But we also have a lot of connection with Malakuta Lifesaving Club in supplying guards. They do their bronze here and they do their gold, and they drift into volunteering or working for Royal Lifesaving, and that's a really great program. We patrol the beach at Bastion Point in the summertime for the welfare of our holiday makers, and that's a really great connection.
And are many volunteers part of the CFA or part of the
Okay,
the
we do
fire?
have some, including one fine young fellow who was one of the centre fighters in response to what happened New Year's Eve, and continues to be part of that CFA unit, and so there are other people as well. But he's a special boy who's out at Gabo Island working and doing things and trying to do his Year 12 at the same time, which is always going to be contestable right now. And a number of our students volunteer in all sorts of ways.
So in the lead up to Christmas last year and the summer season, what kind of preparations were underway for the potential risk of bushfires?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm probably not that qualified to make the comment. I can make an observation, but I think the standard stuff around the conflict between lack of resources for some of our instrumentalities and trying to manage the forest is really a contestable thing when you've got on one side the logging contractors and the other side the environmentalists. There's a balance in between, and people like DWELP and CFA and parks have to respond to that with limited resources. And the people I've mentioned there are some beautifully wonderful people in that industry, straining every inch of what they can do under enormous pressure.
So Malakuta is right in the far east of East Gippsland.
Sure.
And there's one road in and one road out.
Yep.
And otherwise it's by sea or from the airfield about 8 kilometres to the south.
Yeah.
So was there a sense that there was a potential to be cut off with fires?
Well, again, there are probably better qualified people to answer that one, but from my point of view, there was a sense before New Year's Eve that the fire that had started had the potential to get out of control.
And did you get is there a system of messaging or information that you received or monitored?
Yes and no. The school actually goes through a bushfire preparedness
Okay.
So
Can you tell me a bit about that?
We get a grant every year to employ contractors here to make sure our school is as fire ready as possible, and that's removing leaf litter, cutting back, making sure we haven't got a lot on the ground, tidying up, sealing up, making sure we're ready. That's been happening since we've been classed as a bar school, a bushfire school. So that's part of that thing. But remember that the bushfires probably started and affected areas as late November, around Swifts Creek and those places. But for us, it was around the fire that started down southeast.
Near Wiggins River.
Yeah, near the Wigan. And that, as it came, it was an increasing piece of anxiety in the town. We had, for instance, where I live on that corner there, a little D4, D something bulldozer in to just widen the one track again. The resources that they called upon, somewhere between 16 and 20 odd fire trucks came in, and they've come up the line, so they were from as far away as Bendigo, being shunted up the line. I think they wanted 50, and I don't know how much that would have mattered in terms of what came and what was fierce. But there was some preparation, certainly from our professional and volunteer bodies, around what looked like could happen. But the ferocity of what did happen was extraordinary.
So, for yourself, you live on Terra Nova Drive, which is around near Bastion Point. Did you have a bushfire plan for your own home?
Yeah, we did. So Beck and I greened as much as we could, and that much I do know. So back in November, looking at the fire season, we greened as much as we could, and that included part of this very narrow fire break that's there, and locked up the house. We left the night before because Beck had never been in a bushfire, and it was just at that time, and neighbours helped each other. My neighbour helped him and us, and across the road tried to help to get prepared, and some did stay. But we evacuated down to the wharf area, so they decided to make the resort. The place of last resort is the hall.
So we'll just look at the map.
Yep.
So you're over here in Terra Nova Drive, which is just off Bastion Point Road, which is the road that takes it all the way out to the jetty, where eventually the evacuation was mounted.
Absolutely.
But over here is the main road, which is Morris Avenue, is that right?
Yeah, Maurice Avenue.
Maurice Avenue.
Yeah.
And you just said about the wharf, which is down at the end.
Down the point. So the CFA declared that the hall, and there's Captain Stevens Point, or Stevenson's Point, and that area along there was where people should assemble.
And so what you're pointing at is this is the foreshore area where there's caravan parks. So just looking at the map, we've got come down through the main road down to the foreshore area. You talked before about all the caravans and the camping. It's all the way along this foreshore area, and there are these small
and backs up around the back here too.
And around to the lookout and the Devil's Inlet.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the foreshore, there's the wharf, and you were just saying that they've been designated a community hall as a place of
of last resort, or the place to move to.
And that's next to the cinema or near the cinema?
That is the cinema.
It is the cinema.
Yeah. Known as the cinema too.
So it's a multi-purpose.
Sure.
And that's a concrete structure with a sort of a tin roof?
Not all too much concrete in it, but it certainly has some structure to it.
Okay. So you were telling us you were down at the wharf. Do you want to take us through what you and your wife did? So this is on the 30th.
Yeah. So we stayed the night down there with friends, and I suppose the first thing that we really realised, you could smell the fire, and you could see the red glow a fair way away. But during the very early morning, a couple of the fireys came round and said, the head's going to come. You need to get, we were just, I don't know, 50 metres, 30 metres from the wharf itself. You need to evacuate right to the wharf. The wharf was a central point which I thought was a good place to be because that's where they were pumping the fire trucks. So they had a pump, big pump operating, and the trucks would pull in and they'd load up. And there's a bloke you should interview called Barnesy because probably every second word's probably an expletive, but he's the local man here in the CFA and he controlled that area and he was nothing short of magnificent. So that area there was under attack by the fire head went over and it caught across the lake and continued on. And part of that is when the fires come, unless you've been in one, it's just an experience you find hard to describe.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things you need that people know and when it's like that is, yeah, there's the red glow, there's the smoke, but things go black.
So red like this?
Yeah, that's how it looks, yeah.
And that's about just after 6 a.m. on the New Year's Eve?
Yep, that'll be right.
And then black like that?
Yeah.
Not much long later?
Yeah, not much longer, and then the fire head goes over. And the one thing, especially when it attacked around the back here to Terra Nova that I know that happened too, is not only is it black, but the noise. The noise is like a 747 taking off. It's just roaring at you. The radiant heat itself is hard enough. I do know from Roscoe, who was the first fiery with his truck on the scene to protect the school, and without him the school would have gone. He did run out of water, but just fortunately another truck, maybe the Scoresby truck came in behind him and backed it up. He's been at my school 3 times. He walks in, he sits down, he cries. He's one of the strongest men I've ever met, and he's given himself to us.
You've given us a sense of the intensity and the trauma, and I don't want to dwell too much on that because I'm sensitive to those memories don't seem to fade.
No, they don't.
In the short term.
And they can even be amplified, but you know, we've done a bit of debriefing and I'm happy to talk around that. The other part that probably would be worth noting is the amount of feedback I got from people who stayed in the hall, and I'm glad I didn't stay in the hall because it's black.
Was the designated space, wasn't it?
It's black, but you can't see anything. You can't see what's coming.
Yep.
A couple of my mates stayed in the hall and they said it was just terrible. You know, it was smoky, it was hot. You don't know what's happening outside. You want to get out to see what's going on. Even that one of them had turned around and said to me that at one stage he had his head in his hands and he felt the water on his head, and because he was one of the CFA blokes at one time, he thought it was the CFA surrounding the hall to wet it down because the attack was right on us. Right. And yet it was the Red Cross boys with their little sprays keeping people cool. So, but that's how blinded up people are. It's not. In some cases, I can't see you. Yeah. So
the power had already gone by this point.
Oh, power had gone early.
Yep.
Yeah, and we didn't have power for 2 weeks, and that promoted the next stage, which was around fire management and evacuation, and that's something that I'll never forget in terms of what it was.
So let's go forward to that point. Mm-hmm. During the course of that day, announcements were made that the Navy, HMAS Choules and HMAS and Sycamore would be sent around.
Yep.
That would obviously take some time before they would arrive. Mm-hmm. What was the sense in the town and the community at that point?
I think it's an individualised thing because everyone was focused on what they needed to do or reacting to where they were and what they were doing themselves and with their loved ones or family or children. For Beck and I, we took off round to Terra Nova Drive to see if we'd survived, and as we went down the street and there's house after house just flattened. And ours stood, well, yeah, we cried. But on the same token, we've got next door because that was still on fire and started to put that out. Yep. Across the road. The fireys came back again and fought and secured things. and we spent that night at home in the black, and then it was just, Tim, can you go on this emergency management team? And we just went to that straight away, basically, and yeah, it was interesting. I arrived at that first meeting and I'm the only one in uniform. Not in uniform.
Not in uniform.
Yeah, everyone else has got a uniform. I'm going, okay. But yeah, I'll actually, yeah, that was magnificently led by the police officer, Glenn Owens. He was, wow, what a man. Yeah, he's a wonderful man under enormous pressure, because the pressure was to evacuate people because we had no water, no power, we had very limited internet connection or phone connection, and we couldn't get out of town. No aircraft could land, and the chills, well, yeah, I've got a little watch was given to me for my birthday, which is a chills watch. It's treasured. And they were just magnificent, because 20 hours after the fire head went over, we got 1,000 people, thank goodness for the foreshore.
Yeah.
And Mastian Point, to get them off into and away, and that helped the town. And then it was also about relief,
Yep.
then, you know, and getting the right people, Red Cross, Navy, Air Force, ADF in.
So the emergency management plan, had there been an evacuation plan beforehand that you were aware of as
Yeah.
a sort of a contingency?
Well, years ago, the local police and the local CFA got together, and a few other groups, and I was part of that, around what an evacuation plan looks like. And it was always the belief that Mallacoota would have to evacuate in. You can't really get out unless you leave 2 days beforehand. And some people did get out,
Right.
but in the end, you can only turn left or right, and probably there wasn't either option. Certainly this time there wasn't. So it's an evacuation in plan, and using the hall as a last resort, using our CFA volunteers, defending the infrastructure of the town. But as you see that map there, that's not wholly defensible
Yep.
under the current structures.
So it's got, this is the map that the bushfire recovery agencies produced of the fire scar impact in East Gippsland and indeed all of Victoria. And Mallacoota right at the end of that scar.
Yeah.
So then in the map of the town, this is the inlet where we saw a number of boats and people leaving the foreshore.
Oh yeah, up
Is that where that
the
was?
lake, yes,
Onto
yeah,
the lake?
and I've spoken to a couple of my students around that, and yeah, it was a very difficult time for those out in the lake, and it got cold. Strangely enough, I'm not a scientist, but I've been told because of the weather pattern stuff that happened.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been told by a reliable source that we were going to lose 85% of our town. I mean, it would have been an absolute disaster, and there was a little bit of a cool change, slight wind change that helped save us. But yeah, out on the boats, from what they tell me, was quite frightening, because you can't see the camera.
Yeah.
You don't know where you are,
Yep.
and there's a whole lot of smoke, and you're in a boat, and the weather conditions, I don't know whether it was a flat calm or a bit bumpy, but it's just a really difficult time. Some people would have tied up over the other side of the lake, which is probably a safer thing to do, or around what they call Goodwin Sands, which is over here somewhere, out about there, one of the islands across there. But the firehead went over that, and the firehead continued on up into Green Cape there, or
Yes.
in the area across the lake, and it was there for weeks, just dun. And that's the two pieces that I've spoken to my good mate Rob Boucher, who's the principal at Swifts, around the different context.
Yep.
See, Mallacoota had multi-levels. We had people who were here within the fire, right through. We had people who evacuated out. We had people who left before Christmas time and couldn't get back in to help. That's a whole lot of angst around what that looked like with 2 weeks with no power and running off the diesel with the ADF, or the Chinook helicopters bringing in diesel and the ships bringing in diesel, we were going through, I think Glenn told us, about 3,000 litres a day. But that was just for the emergency trucks and management stuff, and they were down to under 1,000 litres a couple of times. And it's really touch and go whether it was going to become difficult. And the public meetings were probably pretty hard too, because Glenn had to lead that with a few good reports from the fireys and management stuff, and the question was always around, how far have you gone to get out of town? When can we leave? When can we leave? And of course, for the first 2 weeks was how long's a piece of string? We don't know. Eventually, we began a strategy around, and we're up to here, and we'll do 200 metres today, or whatever, or 500 metres today, or 50 metres today.
And when they describe that, when they've said that, period, lengths of road that they're going to clear, is that what they were referring to?
Yeah.
And what was the problem as you understood it?
From my point of view, it was just the enormity of the problem. And I've been out of town twice since January the 1st. And both times when you look at what happened, the amount of timber and the amount of unsafeness, and remember that it's got to have some signage for public. And driving to Melbourne is a very difficult drive up Drummer.
How long a drive is it in normal circumstances to drive from Mallacoota to Melbourne?
If you stick within the law, which I'm sure people do, I don't know, you'd say about 6 hours with a rest in between, perhaps 5.5 if you're really pushing it. But it's an extra time now, and certainly was when there was I think an 80k speed zone between here and halfway to almost to Bairnsdale that you had to adhere to, and the same up the coast to New South Wales to Eden. It's a difficult time.
And how would you describe the road for those who've not driven it before?
So I instruct my staff, I don't want them to travel. Our staff often leave for professional development and stuff like that, but I instruct my staff now, you're not to go alone and you're not to travel in darkness. Before the fires, driving between here and Orbost was like driving through Jurassic Park. I mean, with the amount of roos, wombats, and now deer, especially deer, they're a huge problem.
And they feral deer?
Yeah, absolutely, and they're big, and they don't move off the road very quickly if you're doing 100 k's. And they're wild, and they're even here. The deer were here on the golf course. It's wild, so they're spreading. So yeah, look, it's
a windy road.
Oh, absolutely. As I said, driving out of Mallacoota and up Drummer towards Orbost is hardly a straight stretch of road, and it's also the Princess Highway, which you're dealing with B doubles and semis and things that are on the road anyway. So it's a very difficult and dangerous drive.
So the process at the time post the fire, the first round of fire, because it came back, didn't it?
Yeah. I had
Can you
some
describe
really good
that? So that was on the Tuesday, and then it came again on the Saturday.
Yeah. So we were tearing over Drive then, Beck and I, and on our hoses and dressed up and ready to go, and it came very close. It loomed, I suppose. Luckily, it didn't keep coming.
Were the conditions same again? That is
not
red
as bad,
than black? Or?
Yeah, but red, certainly very dark in the afternoon and slightly black. But from where we were in Terranova, it might have been different at Genoa. Certainly we've got people living out at Genoa who they've been impacted very heavily, and out towards what they call the Walligara, which is the river on the other side towards New South Wales. That sort of impact was still there, and of course it crossed over towards Marshmead, which is where MLC have their annex there, and that was continually threatened through late January.
So some people have been evacuated by the Saturday, but there were still those waiting to be airlifted out.
Yeah.
You've described the fires coming back on the Saturday, so still heavy smoke, still interrupting the plans, I guess, to evacuate.
Oh yeah, I haven't made a note, and I went over my notes around exactly, and you'd be able to find out when the first planes were able to get down. But it seemed to me for a number of days that they couldn't. And when they did, with the Spartans, as they call it, the mini Hercules, and wow, and to see, Chinook helicopters and even all the private charter coming in, twin engine aircraft, and then of course the Air Force brought in a couple of their really quick modern helicopters, which were good. And we had a fantastic relationship with the boys from the ADF who looked after the fuel and the bladders, because the one thing I perhaps didn't mention was 2 days before in the fire preparation is Telstra put down a couple of generators out of the golf club, which was always the plan. So they came in on big semi-trailers.
Right.
I
So
reckon.
big diesel generators.
Yeah, and that's where they had to put the bladder down, fill it up, make sure that it got off the ships, and the ADF boys were magnificent doing that.
Speaking of Telstra, what's the mobile communications like out here normally?
So we only get Telstra. So if you come with Vodafone or you come with any other model, it doesn't work. I don't know if I'm speaking out of school, but at one stage there on emergency management, they needed to send a team up to the tower because the generator was failing, and that would have been an absolute disaster to have no communication.
This is the transmission tower.
Yeah.
Where's that located
well,
compared to where we are now at the school?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's one up on the hill up here, and then there's a couple of the mountains outside and on the way to Orbost down that way. But yeah, the transmission's really important. But Telstra's the only one, and of course, the other part of internet access in Malakuta, and this is part of my Year 12 problem and my students' problem, is the access is intermittent. If you want to buy a house in Malakuta at the moment, you won't get an internet connection because the portal's full.
Right.
That's what I'm being told.
Yep.
And that's just not satisfactory to us. And the NBN did come for a while, but that's all been burnt out, so they're going to have to redo that. And how long's a piece of string? That'll take a long time. But the part for our students in this remote learning stuff is around if they can have quality internet access, we can work it. So at our school at the moment, our teachers and staff run foundation to Year 6 are hard packs. So they're there all this morning. So we've got a Monday morning changeover, drop-off changeover. And our Year 7 to 12 are either hard packs by request, or we are doing something I think pretty exceptional and running our normal timetable. So we have a normal, especially our VCE timetable, we have a normal timetable where the teachers are in the window. We use Google Classrooms and WebEx to talk with our students. But again, the anxiety, even this morning I was talking to one of my parents around their Year 12 student, it dropped out, Mr. C, And that build of anxiety, and I reckon the other one you don't know is that since the fires, I reckon we've had at least 3 blackouts and 6 brownouts. So Malakuta is renowned for having power drop out because we're the last on the line.
Yep.
The tree falls down at Orbost or Can River, bang, the line goes down, power goes off. Can be.
And so the backup plans for that happening, if there's a history of that happening, is to have the generators. But is that enough?
Okay, so the school hasn't got a generator, and that's one of the things we've applied for in a new upgrade, is that we have a generator that can keep powering for the school, because the internet connections at this school is probably as good as anywhere in the community.
Right.
And that's why we encourage some of our kids to come back and use that. Yep, but a generator for the town in terms of its internet connection, absolutely. I'm not a techie in that regard, and I don't care what it costs, but it's just a given for towns like ours to have something like that.
But then, of course, you've got to be able to resupply the fuel to run the generator.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's an interesting thing.
So, you said a moment ago about the anxieties that the kids are having with managing schooling in the COVID environment.
Yeah.
How are kids responding or living in the aftermath of the fires themselves? So take us back to, say, January, then February. You attended the community forum in March, and we're now in May.
Yeah. So, it's a good question. What we've tried to do as a school, we have a really strong education support group of teachers here that are well established, and without being too glib, it's a bit of the village knows the student pretty well. So we've aligned all our home groups, an ES officer to check on wellbeing and engagement, keep on checking in. We are strong in our communications. We use our newsletter, we use our website, we use Facebook, and we text, and we meet with restriction out the front. So we're doing everything we can, and I can't acknowledge enough our parents. They're not teachers, but they're trying so hard to support their students. And we want them, of course, back at school, and they will come back to school hopefully sooner rather than later. But we are governed by our Victorian Health Minister and by what our government want us to do, and that's fair enough. But the issue was, it was interesting if you go back to the fires, Dominic, in terms of the first day at school. Was really interesting. The kids won't come, they don't want to be here, you know, they've gone through this. Well, we had 85% of our kids come, and they were keen. They just wanted to see their friends. They wanted to get together to tell their story. And it's a bit the same here at the moment. You can see that some of them want to get here to tell the story. Sure, they've got the third appendage, they've got their mobile phones, but it's not the same as being here, and the socialisation of that's really important.
What kind of support have you had? Have you had additional resources in the aftermath of the fires?
So we were lucky. We had, one of the preeminent psychologists in Australia, Dr. Robert Gordon here, and I'll never forget how he started, because it was day one, and it's all the staff back, so there's 30 people sitting up in the library, and they get Tim's, 2 minutes, and they all roll their eyes, which is me, but that's good. But it was good to, welcome them back, and I'll hand over to Dr. Robert Gordon, not knowing anything what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And he's a middle-aged man, very softly spoken, and he's sitting next to me, so he stood up. He said, "My name's Robert Gordon, and I'm here to talk to you about what's happening." And then he sat down. I went, "What's he doing?" And no notes, no overheads, no anything. He just spoke calmly to our staff about the science and the cognitive structures of what kids will go through trauma, and how that would look for you as a staff to have the strategies in place to try and support them. And he spoke, hour and a half, hour and 45, and there wasn't a word said. It was just unbelievable. So he was the first part of another psychologist who was here, and also some CRTs, relief teachers, 3 relief teachers here, because I needed to gauge how our staff were feeling. Some would come in the morning looking pretty fine, and 11 o'clock they'd probably need a rest.
Yeah.
So we had 3 of our staff lose everything. We had at least 5 families who've lost everything, and then a lot of fire impacted people too. So we needed to manage that, and we continued to have support through January and February. We had some really high quality people. Nusha de Cruz from the department, who is a wonderful Triple SO, was here. The one thing that happened is a bit like the fireys, which I draw your attention to. In the emergency management and in the relief support for the school, people come, but they only stay for 2 weeks. So there is a rollover of, okay, what does a succession plan look like? And especially in the emergency management team, I reckon that can be improved. Yet there's a whole lot of tooling and a whole lot of storytelling, a whole lot of data that these people will be dealing with. But because of OH&S, and I understand that, they have to be rotated. But it is that continuity, especially for kids who don't want to keep retelling their story, who want to make the relationship with their person who's supporting them and make it a longer term relationship. We're very lucky right now with St Vincent de Paul, we're actually talking about this today as a panel. We're employing a psychologist, which to get help in Mallacoota in terms of psych or OT support is just a contestable thing because we're so far away and people don't apply. Is that looks like we're going to get someone here for the 12 months, which is going to be really supporting our school and wellbeing and our kids' engagement. But that's just one part of the strategy. Getting the staff back together will be really important. That'll look interesting.
So you've spoken about mental health issues. What about other health issues for the kids and for the staff? There's been a lot of devastation, a lot of homes, a lot of old homes that have been destroyed.
So one of the things that happened, which was a bit, probably not an easy thing to manage, was around the air quality when we came back. And we had to enlist pretty strongly. My assistant principal, Kathy, did a great job with that, in terms of getting the EPA involved and getting air quality measurement involved. We had air quality measurement outside the school. The air quality looks like this. We still have staff who don't want to stay in their homes because the homes next door are devastated, and they're a bit they're concerned around the quality of the asbestos stuff and things that happen. And I notice when the teams of Grocon's a major contractor here, and they're working their teams. There's quite a few homes that are contaminated. They need to wet it down, deliver that stuff off-site. It's a long way to Warboss to get rid of that.
Yes.
The steel and the concrete, I think, has been offloaded here. But that lengths, I think it's a 6-hour truck return to get rid of that stuff, and that's going to take time.
Yep.
And of course, the rebuild will be really interesting. I don't know the figures on Tarth, but Tarth was a town hit a couple of years ago pretty hard. They lost X amount of homes. Not many homes have been rebuilt.
How many homes lost here about?
Oh, over 100. They say 140 odd dwellings and sheds and things. Out of how many is a good question. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask the Shire about that. But when you think about 1,000 people, there are a lot of holiday homes here.
Yep.
So that would be X amount of homes. But it's still, when you drive around the top end where we are here and up the other end of town, up around Carbathon, there are a lot of homes, and also around outside of town as well.
So your road is Terra Nova Drive. There's a lot of homes gone in around you.
Bastion Point. Down here,
out to the wharf.
There are 8 or 10 homes just in that little area there, down towards the point. And then there's homes up here, and then the devastation of homes in that area, Stanley Avenue and up the back of Becker Road, is another area. And then way over here at Carbathon there's homes, and there's a few homes that got into Cools Inlet, and there's a few homes, of course, in the main drag coming into town.
But where we are, we're not far from where these homes have been devastated in Bastion Point and Terra.
No, I mean, we're
100 metres.
Yeah, well, a bit more than that, but on the same token, up the back of the school here, there's the CFA shed. The CFA shed was under attack. The school was under attack. There's fire areas in the school ground along the fence line that caught,
yep.
And underneath a couple of the classrooms up the top there caught. And if the fireys weren't on the scene then...
Protecting those assets.
Yeah, those assets they tried to protect.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Tim, what I want to take you through now is the before, during and after, and ask you to think about how things might have been done differently or what can be improved for next time, just from your own observations, maybe just within your own home, in the school, in the community. So in the preparedness, getting ready for a fire season, what's important and what more might be done.
Wow, okay. Well, if I look at it from sort of like fire management, which was the initial part of it, the preparedness beforehand, we have to manage and protect our town better. We have to strongly resource our agencies like Parks and DWELP and the CFA to make sure they have a chance. And that includes forest management. I'm not an expert in forest management, but from a personal point of view, the fire breaks that I look at aren't wide enough. And there is plans by good people that were actually sent to government agencies beforehand that again weren't taken up. And we need to work strongly with all our stakeholders in making Mallacoota that unique place, but well protected place too, that we can mean, you can't fight a fire like we're in, but you can fight ember attack, and you have a chance to defend. If we have good management of our fuel management in our forests, the way that looks, attracting the right flora and fauna and maintaining our beauty, that's really critical. But we need to certainly, I believe, widen the fire breaks that we have existing and maybe create a few more. The recovery or the relief stuff is around, the organisations that have come to town have been extraordinary. Red Cross, Salvo, the Army, all those people. The coordination of them could always be better. They set up at the hall and they moved up to the MDHS, and everyone's offering layers of support, and for some of our community they probably need better liaison between that, not just ring the number or not just access the email site or turn up and form a queue and wait to be interviewed. I don't know what that looks like, but there's certain ways I think we could do better. We could certainly, in terms of recovery, we're operating off a really great document from the department around trauma, but it needs sustainability. It needs consistency about if I'm going to have people come into my school or our school and talk around recovery and build relationships with kids, it needs to be a longer term thing, because that's where the students will respond best. And how that looks for them is really important, because it's going to be a really challenging year for our Year 12s, and like everyone in Australia who's been affected, it's going to be very challenging. So that's the recovery part also for our aged people. Mallacoota does have an aged population, doubly impacted by COVID-19, which we all are. We need to make sure we have enough support in this town to make sure no one gets left behind. No one's in their house too long alone. All that sort of thing that's really important. Mallacoota is very good at that. We've got really great volunteer clubs. Like the Lions Club is a very active club here, and they do a lot of great work in that regard. So in the long term, it will be, we're in uncharted areas. So I think with our VCE stuff, trying to, as I think I said, I don't know if I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. There is a move with the VCAA, and with VTAC around shortening up the outcomes and trying to keep a semblance of the year, given the fact that we might get our kids back soonish, okay? Instead of trying to go too long into next year, our kids need certainty. Our universities will be under extraordinary pressure with their international students, but that whole that's a whole nightmare. But that, that might give opportunities for my kids at Mallacoota. So it's being a bit selfish, I'm being very selfish, but that's going to be a huge issue, and it will be an issue not in the next 12 months, but obviously an economic and human resource issue for years to come, and that'll be interesting.
So it's been a very significant year for you as the leader of the school community. Where do you want the school to be this time next year, 5 years?
Okay. This is a privilege to be here. It's probably the most privileged I've been in any vocation, in any time and anywhere, and I can see that the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 5 years will be a really important part. Mallacoota will rise, and it is rising now. I have enormous faith in our community, and I believe it will be a vibrant, really strong, contextual Mallacoota stamp, which is a really interesting thing to say, around what we offer our kids here, because we can micromanage, and we are very successful at doing that. So that's why I'd hope for a whole lot of support for our community and our staff here. Our staff are quite extraordinary in trying to stretch, so they'll continue to do so.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the commissioners? Now, you met with them on the 19th of March in the community forum.
Right.
We're now in May. Anything by way of an update?
There's been a lot of talk around what does all the donations that have happened, and some of the donations you don't need, but certainly there's been a lot of magnificence around that. Some of the earmarking for that we're not sure where is, because one thing I should mention is that there is a local community group forming, which is an amazing effort. We wanted 12 candidates or 12 people to serve a Malakuta Bushfire Relief Committee that would have a voice around what this town looks like. Well, we had 44 people nominate,
Wow.
which just again tells you how wonderful this community really is. That's in the process of an electoral system now, a voting system, so they'll be up and running hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And
So democracy in action.
oh, big time here. It is the Greek model. It is, the people's voice are very strong, and so it should be. And that's to be endorsed on all levels. But so it'll be really interesting to see how that coordinates with all the federal, state and other stakeholders around bushfire recovery. And I look forward to being part of that from the schools. I'm not on that, didn't nominate. My job's here, looking after my students and my school community.
Do you think there's an important role for the local organisation using local knowledge?
You say important,
less top down and more bottom
well,
up.
you say important. No, it's vital.
Right.
Yeah, it is what every community, and I'm sure there are other communities around Australia who will be saying the same thing. That context is everything. You know, the way people operate in a town, the way they grow, live, and be is so important to understand. And yes, I believe, and I can say this because I've been in a few places in my time. Things are different. You know, Malakuta is different to Corryong. Corryong is different to Langata, different to Sorrento. It's that context we need to embrace and understand.
I don't think I have anything more for you, Tim. Is there any?
No. Just thanks for the opportunity. There are plenty of good voices in Malakuta, and I'm proud to be one, but not a voice, but I'm also pretty proud to be a principal at my school.
Well,
So thank you.
We thank you for your time, and we should let you get back to the work that you need to do.
So, okay.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Good on you, Dominic.